She worked as a janitor, but one day, the CEO proposed. The office gleamed with polished floors and bright lights, a world apart from where Sarah quietly swept each night. She moved with a humble grace, her mop gliding smoothly over the tiles, unnoticed by most. Sarah was 29, a janitor who had long accepted the invisibility that came with her job. Yet beneath the uniform was a woman full of dreams and quiet strength. Across the glass walls in the corner office, Mark, the 38-year-old CEO of a booming tech company, was the definition of success. Tailored suits, confident smiles, and the kind of influence that shaped futures. But Sarah was more than just a cleaning lady to him. From the moment they crossed paths months ago, something about her resilience and kindness stayed with him. Their worlds couldn't have been more different. She worked nights while he commanded boardrooms. She faced whispers and sideways glances from co-workers who doubted she belonged in their polished world. Yet Mark saw Sarah for who she truly was, a woman whose courage shone far brighter than any title or role. Tonight, the company's gala shimmered with elegance, but Sarah's heart was elsewhere. As she finished her shift, Mark approached quietly, his eyes reflecting a sincerity that surprised her. "Sarah," he said softly, "there's something I've been meaning to tell you." The grand ballroom was bathed in warm amber light, crystal chandeliers casting delicate sparkles across the polished marble floor. The hum of soft music floated through the air as guests in elegant gowns and sharp tuxedos mingled, their laughter mingling with the clink of glasses. But Sarah stood apart, her hands still faintly scented with cleaning solution, her janitor's uniform replaced by a simple yet elegant navy blue dress that seemed to capture the quiet strength she carried. Inside, Mark approached her slowly, his usual commanding presence softened by a nervous smile. His tailored black suit fit perfectly, but it was the vulnerability in his eyes that caught Sarah off guard. Around them, the crowd swirled in a blur, conversations, champagne toasts, and the flash of cameras. But for this moment, it was just the two of them. Sarah's heartbeat quickened, a mix of disbelief and hope fluttering in her chest. The past months of stolen glances in the hallways, the quiet support when no one else noticed her, all led to this fragile moment. Mark reached out gently, taking her hand in his, a gesture so simple but charged with meaning. "Tonight isn't just about the company's success," Mark said quietly, his voice steady but full of emotion. "It's about recognizing the people who make it all possible, even those who work behind the scenes." Sarah swallowed hard, the weight of his words sinking in. She had spent years invisible to most, her efforts unnoticed, her dreams tucked away beneath the daily grind. Yet here she was, standing in the center of a world she never imagined could include her. Months before this night, the building's corridors were a constant maze for Sarah. The clatter of her mop bucket echoed through the quiet offices late at night, blending with the soft hum of computers and the occasional murmur of late-working employees. She was invisible to most, a janitor, a name rarely spoken. But that changed the evening Mark Thompson stayed late, buried in paperwork that would decide the future of his company. Sarah noticed him first, exhausted and frustrated, his usual confidence replaced by the weight of responsibility. One night, as she quietly cleaned near his office door, she accidentally dropped a rag. Mark looked up, surprised by her presence, and for a moment, their eyes met. There was no awkwardness, just a brief connection, a silent acknowledgement of two people carrying their own burdens. Days passed, and Mark found himself seeking Sarah's company more often. Not for the usual office banter or business talk, but for the genuine kindness she offered without expectation. She listened without judgment, sharing stories about her dreams beyond the janitor's closet, about wanting to go back to school and rewrite her life's narrative. But their growing friendship wasn't without challenges. The corporate world was quick to gossip, and whispers began circulating. Colleagues questioned why the CEO spent time with a janitor. Doubts surfaced, and Sarah felt the sting of judgment, not because of who she was, but because of who they thought she should be. Mark, too, wrestled with the pressure. Could he bridge the gap between their worlds without losing respect? Would Sarah be willing to risk everything for a chance at something new? Their early days were filled with stolen conversations in empty hallways, cautious smiles, and the unspoken fear that this connection could shatter under scrutiny. Yet, beneath it all, a quiet determination grew, a shared belief that their bond was worth fighting for, no matter the obstacles ahead. As their bond deepened, so did the silence between them in certain moments. Small hesitations, pauses that hadn't existed before. Sarah began to question her place, not just in Mark's life, but in the world he came from. One evening, after a long day, he invited her to a corporate fundraiser. She declined politely, saying she was tired. But the truth was harder to say aloud. She didn't own the kind of dress that fit in among those guests. She couldn't imagine herself beside him under chandeliers, being introduced as anything but the janitor who used to clean here. Mark noticed her retreat, and it made him uneasy. Not because he doubted her worth, but because he had never loved someone the world might label a risk. He tried to reassure her, to say he didn't care what others thought. But words began to fail in the spaces where reality lived, in the glances his board members gave when they saw her, in the way a client once asked if she was the new assistant. Sarah laughed it off that night, but the sting remained long after. It wasn't villainy. There was no evil stepmother, no jealous rival. Just the quiet weight of difference, the gap between boardrooms and break rooms, between inherited privilege and earned resilience. Sarah began to wonder if love alone was enough. Could feelings survive when the world around them refused to bend? Mark, for all his certainty, also began to wrestle with doubt. Not about Sarah, but about himself. Could he protect her from this world? Would his own silence in board meetings, his passive nods when others subtly dismissed her, would those small failures become the cracks that broke everything? One night, Sarah sat alone in her apartment, staring at a text from Mark. "I miss you. I'm here if you want to talk." Her thumb hovered over the screen, but she said nothing. Instead, she turned off the phone and sat quietly, hearing only the sound of her breath and the hum of self-doubt. The night it all came to the surface wasn't stormy. There was no thunder, no dramatic lightning. It was calm, too calm. Sarah had just finished mopping the hallway of the hospital's west wing when Mark appeared, unexpected, holding a small paper bag from her favorite coffee shop. He offered it like peace, like a question, not knowing if she'd accept. She took it slowly, her fingers brushing his. "Thanks," she whispered, eyes fixed on the floor. He waited for her to say more, but she didn't. They sat on a bench in silence, the smell of bleach still lingering faintly in the air. For once, Mark looked unsure, his pressed shirt slightly wrinkled, his usually confident expression faltering. "Do you love me?" she asked suddenly, her voice barely above a whisper but sharp like a blade. He turned to her, startled. "Of course I do." She looked up at him, her eyes brimming with something deeper than tears, years of carrying her own worth like a question mark. "Then why do I feel like a secret?" Mark's chest tightened. He tried to answer, but nothing came, so she kept going. "I know what people think. I hear the whispers. I see the glances when we walk into a room together. I feel like I'm always being measured, like I have to prove I belong beside you. And I'm tired, Mark. I'm tired of feeling like I'm just someone you found, not someone you chose." Her voice broke on the last word. He reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "I spent my whole life cleaning up after people who never saw me. You saw me, or at least I thought you did. But now I don't know if I'm a woman you love or just a story you tell to feel good about yourself. That landed hard. Mark's heart pounded. Sarah, I never meant to make you feel that way. But I do, she said, shaking her head. Not because you're cruel. You're not. But because you've never had to fight to be seen. I have. Every day. And sometimes, I wonder if I'm just a reminder of everything you don't understand. The silence between them thickened, almost suffocating. Then, Mark did something she didn't expect. He stood, walked a few steps away, then turned back to face her. His voice, when it came, was raw. I don't understand everything. You're right. I've never had to explain my worth to anyone. But I know this. When I'm with you, I see more clearly. I hear things I never noticed. I question myself in ways I never did before. And yes, it scares me. Because you deserve better than a man still learning how to love you the way you need. Sarah blinked. Her chest rose, then fell. I'm not perfect, Sarah. I've messed this up. But I'm not here because you make me feel good. I'm here because I don't know who I am without you. Her lips trembled, and the coffee cup shook slightly in her hand. That's not what I needed to hear, she whispered. But it's the first honest thing you've said in a long time. Their eyes locked. For the first time in weeks, something opened, something unguarded and unfiltered. Not a solution, not a promise, just truth. And sometimes truth is the first real gift we give to someone we love. They didn't speak much after that night. Not because there was nothing left to say, but because the words needed time to settle, like dust in sunlight. Mark didn't rush her, and Sarah didn't pretend everything was fine. There was a quietness between them now. But it wasn't the painful kind. It was the kind that allowed space for healing. One afternoon, Sarah found a note tucked under her mop handle in the janitor's closet. It was scribbled in Mark's messy handwriting. No fancy card, no company letterhead. Just a crumpled piece of paper that read, "Meet me where it all started." She knew exactly what it meant. When she arrived at the rooftop of the hospital's old wing, the same spot where they'd once shared a sandwich and dreams during her lunch break, Mark was already waiting, nervously pacing, a folded blanket beneath his arm and 2 thermoses of hot tea beside him. He looked up when she appeared, and something changed in his eyes, not desperation, not guilt, but reverence. "I didn't bring you up here to fix anything," he began, stepping toward her. "I brought you here to tell you, I'm not going anywhere." Sarah crossed her arms, still guarded, but listening. "I thought I loved you because you were strong, because you survived so much, because you worked twice as hard for half the credit. But that's not love. That's admiration. And it took me weeks of missing you to realize. I don't love you because you're inspiring. I love you because you're real." He walked closer, his voice low and trembling. "I love you when you're tired, when you're quiet, when you roll your eyes at my dumb jokes. I love you when you don't believe in yourself, and I'll still love you when you can't see what I see. You're not a janitor to me. You're not a project or a cause. You're just Sarah. And that's enough for me. That's more than enough." She looked at him, her guard still trying to hold, but the tears were already slipping down her cheeks. "I didn't want to need you," she said softly. "I spent so long being on my own, proving I didn't need anyone to make me whole." Mark nodded. "And you don't. You never did. But needing someone doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're human." Her shoulders shook as she let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. He stepped forward again, gently holding out his hand. "No more apologies," he whispered. "No more proving yourself. Just stay. Let's figure this out, together." Sarah stared at his hand for a moment. Then, slowly, carefully, she placed hers in his. Not because all the pain had vanished, but because for the first time she believed she didn't have to walk through it alone. Love. Real love. Doesn't arrive with fireworks or rescue missions. It shows up with truth, patience, and the willingness to stay when it's hard. And on that rooftop, wrapped in silence and warm tea, they began again. No conditions, no performance, just two hearts, flawed, brave, and finally, free. The hospital. Auditorium wasn't built for fairy tales, but that day it witnessed one. Sarah stood center stage, the room packed with white coats, navy scrubs, and city suits. Her janitor uniform had been traded for a soft blue dress, one that made her look like calm water. She clutched a small index card, her hand steady. Behind her, a banner read, "Voices of the Invisible, a tribute to frontline heroes." Mark sat in the front row, eyes never leaving her. She cleared her throat. "For years, I cleaned the floors of this place. Most of you walked past me without knowing my name. That's okay. I didn't clean for recognition. I did it to make sure patients didn't slip, to make sure dignity was preserved. But along the way, I started to believe something dangerous, that what I did defined my worth." The room fell into stillness. Even the hallway noise outside seemed to pause. "I thought love was something meant for the accomplished, the educated, the shiny resumes. But love, real love, doesn't read resumes. It reads the heart. It doesn't care what shoes you wear to work, only how you walk with people when they're broken." She paused, emotion thick in her throat. But when she looked at Mark, it steadied her. One person saw me, not just what I did, but who I was. And that changed everything. There were murmurs in the crowd. Some nurses had tears in their eyes. Others looked down, guilty maybe, remembering the times they'd dismissed her. But Sarah wasn't here to shame. She was here to rise. "This hospital gave me a paycheck, but that man—" She gestured to Mark, who smiled through misty eyes. "He gave me a platform, and today I stand not as a janitor, not as someone less than, but as someone finally unafraid to take up space." After her speech, there was a long silence. Then applause broke, slow at first, then thunderous. Doctors stood, administrators followed. For the first time in her life, Sarah was not background. She was the moment. Reporters swarmed, not for gossip, but for inspiration. Her story made headlines. CEO marries janitor, but her words stole the spotlight. It wasn't a love story wrapped in pity. It was a revolution wrapped in tenderness. Weeks later, Sarah launched a foundation with Mark, Second Glance, a program focused on empowering overlooked workers in healthcare, janitors, food staff, laundry crews. She began touring hospitals around the country, sharing her journey, breaking ceilings with every sentence. The girl who once cried on bathroom floors now stood behind podiums, her voice echoing through auditoriums. Not because she wanted fame, but because silence no longer suited her. Love didn't just change her life, it amplified her, and Mark, always at her side but never in her way, cheered as she bloomed. When people asked him how it felt to marry a janitor, he would smile and say, "I didn't marry a janitor. I married a giant who had been told she was small." And that was the real ending. Not a wedding, not a kiss, but a woman, fully seen, finally unafraid to speak, and a world that finally listened. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to smash that thumbs up and hit subscribe for more unforgettable, emotional, and viral true stories. We want to hear from you. Drop a comment and tell us, where in the world are you watching from?